Hi everybody, and welcome to part 4 of Welcome Spring, the bench pillow. And I'm so excited. This is the last video of this series, and we'll get to put this bench pillow together, and we're going to make some flowers to put on the front. And so let's just get started with the sewing. So the first part we're going to do is the sewing part. We're going to sew this together. I'll talk about the fabric and the backings and stuff. But we're going to start with the rickrack. So this particular pillow, excuse me, has some rickrack along the edging right here. You can see right in here. So I found some really nice large red rickrack, and I'm going to use that. So here's my pillow. You know, we saw that our pillow top. It's so cute with my little boots and everything. And so we're going to put some rickrack along the edge, just along the seam line right here, between the borders and the body of the pillow. So what I did is I found this really nice wide rickrack, and I think this will look just really nice on there, like that. And I had red. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to, what I usually do when I do this kind of stuff, sorry, I just wonked the camera here. When I do this kind of stuff, I like to use a little glue just to help me to hold it in place while I'm working on it. So we'll talk about this. So this rickrack, I cut it about 18 inches. It's going to be a little long, but we can just trim it off on both ends. And because this is about 16 and a half for 17, when I trimmed off my pillow. And so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take my Dritz. This is a Dritz fabric glue stick. So it's important that you're using fabric glue stick because then it doesn't gum your needle. So that's really important. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this along that seam line right here. And I'm going to take my rickrack and I'm going to glue the rickrack down to the top like this. Just kind of holds it in place temporarily. This is kind of a temporary thing, you know, and it's water soluble, but it's nice because it gives me a chance to get it glued down or to get it sewn down without it moving around on me. So we're just going to kind of stick it down, and I'm just going to do a little bit more like this. Just kind of, you know, just kind of tacks it down a little bit so that I don't have to worry about it scooching around too much. All right, whoops. Dropping everything on the ground here. Okay, so I'm going to turn this the other way so I can see if I got it pretty straight. I was just kind of running it. I was trying to run it like kind of straight along the seam line there. So hopefully it looks pretty straight. And we're just going to run a straight stitch down. So let's just do one at a time here. Might be easier just to do one at a time. And I've got some cotton, red cotton thread in my needle and my bobbin. This is my Pima cotton. Let's see here. I'm just going to push it down to make sure it's sticking for me. And I left a little bit. Like I said, I cut it about 18 inches just to give me a little bit so I could trim it off, you know, so that it's nice and clean on the edges. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of run down the middle here. That's usually what I do with rickrack. And if you kind of care, I got my needle in my center. I've just got a straight stitch on the machine. And I'm just going to try to run this down the center here. We'll see how this goes. Sometimes this is wide, so it's a little easier to run it. So I'm going to try to do a second here. Make sure I've got everything plugged in here. There we go. Okay. Get this out of my way. And we're just going to run this down, try to run this down kind of the center of the rickrack. That's the goal. That's why I like to use pretty matchy thread, so if I'm a little bit off, you know, it's okay. I'm just going to run this down the center here. Whoops, second here. I'm going to get stuck here. I couldn't believe I could actually found this rickrack at the Walmart in Anamosa. I was so excited to find some large rickrack. It's hard to find sometimes. Rickracks are hard to find. Okay, for a while there they were really popular, and now they've been a little less popular. So I think that looks pretty good. All right, so there's our red rickrack on one side. Let's just turn this around to the other side. And it actually looks pretty straight, believe it or not. That's amazing. I'm not always very straight when I do these kind of things, you know? So, all right, so let's do this one. Lay this back here. We'll talk about the backings here in a minute because we're going to put this all together, but we have to put the rickrack on first. So I'm going to run some more Dritz fabric glue here, along here, and we're going to put this along the edge here of where the seam allowance is. Push it down. This is always my favorite video to make, is when we put it together, because then it's all done and it's so pretty. I'm always anxious to get this done. All right, let's get this pushed down. We're going to put some flowers on, and I decided to use pull flowers. So the pull flowers, you know, when this came out, this pillow, bench pillow has been out for a long time, and they didn't have any of their pull flowers, you know, their little pull flowers. And I know most of you probably know what those are, but we're going to use pull flowers on this instead of making all the flowers. I just love the pull flowers, and they're so much easier, and you can pick, there's a whole bunch of different colors. So we're going to use pull flowers on this instead of making yo-yos and felt flowers and all that. We're going to use the pull flowers on it. All right, so let's see if that looks pretty straight. That looks pretty good. All right, let's see if we can get this one straight. Got my straight stitch selected. Let's bring this down. I'm going to go over the top here so I don't put my hand in front of the camera. And we're just going to go down the center. Let's see how we do. I just love this big rickrack. They actually use rickrack on a lot of different things, but it's real hard to find this real wide stuff. I think I need to have a new foot controller. I've noticed my foot controller is acting weirdo. It keeps, if you hear the beeping, it's because my foot controller is weird. So I apologize in advance. This one kind of scooted on me a little bit. Just a second. There we go. It's time for a new foot controller. I've had this foot controller for a very long time, and I think it's starting to act up. All right, so let's turn this over and see. Oh my gosh, I actually got it pretty straight, didn't I? That looks pretty good. All right, so we've got our rickrack on our pillow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm just going to trim this off, even with the, you know, with the pillow edge. I just made it a little wider so that I could trim it off to make sure it was long enough. And we'll just trim our thread and trim these off. I love that wide rickrack. So we're getting the decorative stuff. This is, so I'm doing the other side. You can't see it. I'm sorry that this pillow is so dang long. You can't get it all on the camera. So, all right. So there is our rickrack. Isn't that pretty? I love that. So that's one of the decorations on this pillow. We're also going to do the embellishment stuff. You know, we'll do the flowers and everything. And I'm going to use the bow maker tonight. And we'll use some pretty buttons and different things. Okay. So what I'm doing is on page number 9 of the instructions. And it's where it says sew the following. And it talks about the rickrack. And then lay each jumbo rickrack piece, you know, directly on top of the seam allowances or the seam lines and so on. Okay. And then now we're going to put the backing on. So this is where I did something different. Okay. I talked about this in the cutting and things. So what I like to do is do the 3-piece back. They started doing those about the time of maybe the Halloween pillow that happened just not too long ago. And I love the 3-piece back because it's way easier to get the pillow form in, because otherwise you had like a 2-piece back, and then, you know, you were trying to shove this great big long pillow form in this whole piece of this whole pillow top. So I love these 3-piece pillow backs. So the 3-piece pillow backs are 2 pieces that are roughly 17 by 10. They're 10 inches wide and they're about 17 inches long. So mine are going to be a little bit on the long side, so I'll just trim them off a little bit before I start sewing. But and then what I do on one side, one long side of each one, I hem it. So I just turn it down 1/4 of an inch and turn it down another 1/4 of an inch. So you can see that I've done that already on these. So I didn't have to sit here and bore you doing hemming. Okay. So this is on one long side of each one. Now, if you happen to have fabric that is directional, make sure you lay them down so that the direction is correct. Now, this is not directional, so I just did 2 sides. Okay. So these are 10 by 17. So there's 2 pieces that are 10 by 17. So I told you in the earlier video that you will need about a yard of fabric to do the backing on this one instead of only a half a yard, because I love these backings. They're so much easier to get things in and out of. Okay. And then the center section of the back pillow back is going to be 28 inches by 17 roughly. And I'm going to trim this off a little bit. So when we sew this, when I pin this on, I'll pin it and then I'm going to get up and trim it off I'm probably going to need about a half an inch or so trimmed off. But we'll just, and in fact, I could do it beforehand. So I might measure it now. Sometimes I just trim it off after I have it all pinned and I just trim one side off, but I may do it earlier. But this one then fits in the center, and these 2 are going to be on the ends. Okay, so this is 28 by 17. And my pillow right now, I think it's only about 16 and a half. So I'll do a little measuring and I may just go trim these off real quick before I pin them on. Okay, so let's do that now. So these are 28 by 17 right now, and these are 10 by 17. I have hemmed on the 28 by 17. I've hemmed that piece on each end, each 17-inch end. So here's the other end. Okay, so those are all hemmed. Turn it over 1/4 of an inch and another 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and then they'll overlap about 3 inches on each end roughly. So I love these 3-piece backs. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and measure. I'm going to find my tape measure here. And let's measure this pillow. And it seems like it's a little shorter than 17. I want to say it might have been about 16 and a half. So let's measure it here. Looks like it's just a little bit over 17 and a half. So it's about 16 3/4. So I'm probably going to have to trim off my fabric just a little bit. So it looks like it's about, so this is important. Just go ahead and measure, you know, you're trying to get it even on the end there. So it's about 16 3/4. Looks like it's about 16 3/4. My ends are a little longer than my middle, so we may trim it off just a little bit shorter. Yeah, it's really about, let's see here. Let me measure this one. About 16 and a half. So we'll probably do about 16 and a half for my backs. So that's important. Just measure your pillow form, the front of it, to see if it's about the same size. But I know that I told you to do the backs at 17, so I think I'm going to trim them off about a half an inch. So I'll go trim these off about a half an inch so that they are about 16 and a half. Because you can see if I lay these up here now, that they're going to be a little longish on the ends. Okay, and then I expected that because sometimes after you quilt everything scooches up a little bit, and it's still going to be plenty wide enough. We're going to be just fine, but I am going to go ahead and trim my backs off a little bit. So I need about a half an inch off. Okay, so I'm going to go do that now. I'll stop the video for a moment while I go do that, and I'm going to trim my ends and my centerpiece off, and then I'm going to come back and we'll put this together. We're going to be just sewing around the outside edge. It's really awesome to get it done quickly. So it's got one of those really cool 3-piece envelope backs. Okay, so I've got my backs all trimmed down to the 16.5. Now make sure you measure your own pillow top because yours may be a different size than mine. So just make sure you measure it so that you know that you've got the tops the correct size. And we're going to start with the 2 end pieces, the pieces that were 10 by, well, then now they're 16.5. Okay, so we're going to put those on first. And what we're going to do is we're going to line up the raw edges. So I'm going to put those on and I'm going to line up the raw edges, and the hems are going to be towards the inside of the pillow on each end. So if you give me a second here, I'm going to find some pins and we're going to pin these on the edge on the one on each end. So get this going here. Oops, got to find my pins. They're down underneath here. There we go. So I'm going to pin these on. Make sure you got the edge of your rickrack in there, like this. So we're going to put one of these on each end. Oops, a little bit off here. Ouch, I just hooked myself. I love these magic pins. They're wonderful, wonderful thin pins, but oh my gosh, are they sharp. You will find that they're incredibly sharp. So that's just like a lancet. If you need to check your blood sugar, you ought to be able to do it with these pins, let me tell you, because I'm always stabbing myself with them. All right, so we're going to turn this over and we're going to do this side. And I might have a couple different pins here. I've got some flathead ones and I've got the standard ones. So I like them both. I haven't been able to get the standard ones. I've been able to get the flathead ones lately. So I have some of both on the website. But the standard ones have been out of stock for a while. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. So again, raw edges together on the ends, and I'm putting the hemmed edge inside. So I'm going to go ahead and just line these up on my raw edge. Put some pins in here. Make sure I got my rickrack kind of pinned down as well. And I always like to put a pin right where the end is, so I know where that is, because I'll show you that in a minute, because we're going to do something special on the edges where those overlaps are to make sure that we don't have problems with breakage, like with the thread breaking when we go to put the pillow in and out. Okay, so we get that pinned in there. Okay, so there's the 2 ends. Now what I'm going to do now, pull this back just a little bit, and I'm going to fold my pillow in half, my pillow top in half. And then I'm going to mark where my center seam is, or my center is here with a pin on both sides. So I want to do it on the top and the bottom. So I'll do the other side here. I just love envelope backs because then you don't need to sew all the way around and you don't have to do a bunch of hemming, or you don't have to like turn things. This turns out so cool. These envelope backs are wonderful. Okay, so I've just got this marked in the center right here. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing to my long panel. This is the panel that was 28 by roughly 17. Now it's 16.5 because I cut it off a little bit. And I'm just going to find the centers of that as well. Put a pin there. Put this in. See if I can get it in there. And do the other side. I'm so excited to get this done. I've been wanting to do this pillow for a very long time, and the videos have actually taken me quite a while to get done. So I was hoping to get these done before Memorial Day because to me it's still spring. since this is a spring pillow. And it finally is starting to feel like spring and summer because the weather's finally warmed up a little bit. So I told myself this was going to be done before Memorial Day. I've got about a week left. So a lot of things have happened in this last couple, this like 4 weeks that I've been working on these videos. So, okay, so here is my center for the bottom. So I'm gonna line up my 2 pins. I'm gonna pin those together there, and we'll do the other side. So I'm trying to do this. I usually do this over on my, on my cutting table, but I wanted to show you what I was doing. So I'm trying to do this on the sewing machine. Sometimes it's a little hard over here and you can't see the whole pillow at a time, but at least you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so then I'm going to line up my edges here, and I'm going to pin across here. So I got the centers lined up, and then I'm going to pin across. So when you get across over here, you're going to notice that these are going to overlap maybe about 3 or so inches. And I like to put a pin on each hem so I know exactly where this overlap is, because we need to know that when we go to sew this together. Okay? So I like to make sure there's a pin right there and right there so I know where the overlap is. So let's do the other side here. But these 3-piece backs are so wonderful and they're easy to do, but you do need about 1 yard of fabric instead of the half yard that they recommend. The 2-piece backs didn't take quite as much fabric, but they don't overlap as well either. So I really like these 3-piece backs better. I just rather buy it in a little extra fabric. So I've been very happy with these. And they just so much easier to get the pillow forms in and out of. Okay, so there is that side. So now I'm just going to flip it over here and we'll do the other side. The same thing. So you should have, with this 3-piece back, then you should have about a 3-inch overlap on each side. And I like to have plenty of overlap so that I don't have any gaps when I put the pillow form in. So this is going to look really nice. Okay. So let's do, here's where the hem is. There's the hems right here, and then there's another hem right here. So we'll put a pin right there. And then I'm going to turn it over and do this other side here. So the big piece goes on last. The 2 ends go on first, and then you put the big piece on. So I'm getting my little, this is where the hem is. There's a hem right there, and there's another hem right here. So see, I got about 3 inches or so of overlap. Might be a little bit more than 3 inches of overlap. So then it doesn't gap if you have a little bit more overlap. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to sew all the way around this pillow with a 1/4 inch seam. So I'm going to go find my 1/4 inch seam here. I like to use the piecing stitch on the machine. So I'm going to go over here to my Q tab. So most of the Brother Baby Lock machines have a Q tab. And then I'm going to go use Q02. And what it does is it moves the needle over to the right here. And then I can run the fabric right along the edge of my regular J-foot because it tells me J-foot on the machine. And that is a 1/4 inch. Okay, so a second, I'm going to get my pins out of the way here so I can work on this. Now, so what I like to do is I like to start when I'm going to sew all the way around this. I like to start where one of those overlaps is, because what we're going to do, I found that I had a lot of problems with these little overlaps wanting to rip out on me. So what I do is I sew forward on them. So what I did when I had the camera off, I actually switched my fabric, or my thread, excuse me, to a white Pima cotton thread. And I'm using my 1/4 inch seam, again, Q02, and I'm going to sew over from one edge of the overlap to the other edge. I've got my stitch length at 2.5. Okay, second here, there we go. All right, so I'm going to sew to the other end of the overlap, like that. Then I'm going to hit the reverse button, and I'm going to reverse all the way back over that overlap So I get back to the pin that was on the other side of the overlap, and then I'm going to go over it again. So in other words, I'm going to sew over it 3 times, because then I don't have the problem with the breakage, because I was always having those seams where the overlap seam was. There's usually quite a little bit of pressure there when you're putting your pillow in, and I was having a hard time with those breaking open. All right, so give me a second here. I've got a whole bunch of stuff up here that I'm going to have to move so I don't knock it all off on the floor. Okay, so I've got my pivot feature on. So if you don't know what the pivot feature is on these machines, a lot of them have it. It's this little button right here that looks like a foot with a needle through it. And you notice that my needle stopped down and my foot came up when I went to pivot around the corner. Except that I need to take one more stitch. I'm going to take one more stitch. There we go. All right, so now we're going to pivot around the corner. And I'm going to go around. So now we see we don't have to start and stop anywhere. We're just going to go all the way around the outside. And that's the glory of having a envelope back. So we're just going to sew all the way around with our 1/4 inch seam. But every time we get to one of those overlaps, we're going to sew back over it. And that was a little trick I figured out a while ago. And you could use like a triple stitch there too. But I found that if I just reverse over it, it's not very long. And then sew back over it. It's basically the same thing. It's going over it 3 times. Okay, so we're going to go around the corner. Oops, one more stitch. Take one more stitch. There we go. And we're going to go this way. We're getting close to one of those overlaps again. A second here. I forgot a pin, didn't I? All right, so here we are at our overlap. So I'm going to leave that pin in because then I know where to come back to. So this is our overlap right here. So I'm going to drive over. I'm going to sew over the overlap. And when I get to this side where the other pin is, I'm going to back up over it with the reverse button. I'm just holding my reverse button in and I'm backing up over it. Okay. And then I'm going to go back straight again. So that way I've sewn over that and reinforced that overlap area so that it will not rip when I put my pillow form in. And I've had real good luck with doing this. I know it sounds silly, but it works really well. Okay, second here, whoops. Kind of in the middle here. Second, everything's going down in the hole behind my, I have my embroidery unit on, so everything goes down in the little hole behind my machine here. It's looking great. I thought this was going to be a really fun pillow. I've really enjoyed working on this. Such a pretty one. I like these older the older bench pillows because they are kind of a challenge because I have to do them differently because I don't know. Okay, so now I'm going to run out of bobbin thread. So I'm going to tie off. Okay, I'm going to tie off right here. I knew I was going to run out of bobbin thread, so I'll put another bobbin in. Have to excuse me. I was trying to use up a couple small bobbins and I figured I'd run out, so I did. So you just get to watch me change my bobbin. There's not a whole lot in this one either. I hope I get all the way around the rest of it with this one. I'm about out of white thread. The Pima cotton thread that I love so much is not being made anymore. And so I'm trying to use up every little piece that I have, every little bit of thread before I have to go out and buy some other kind of thread. So, all right. So we're going to continue on. I just tied off where I started. We may not make it around. I may have to make another bobbin yet. All right. So now we're getting close to that. Okay, so here's that overlap again. Right, oops, second here. I think I overshot it. Let me look. I did. I took my pin out prematurely. So almost overshot my second one here. So this one, here's the pin. We'll put the pin back in so I can see it. Make sure I got it. Okay, so now we're in another one of those overlaps. So I'm going to go forward here. Okay, And then I'm going to back up until I get to the pin behind it. And it's about 3 to 4 inches. Okay. And then I'm going to go forward again. Over the top. We got one more of those to do. All right. There we go. Almost forgot. I've had to go back and stitch them again every now and then. I forget one. All right. Hopefully you can see okay. I'm a little bit tipped up, sorry. Okay, now we're going to turn the corner again. Just a second. I got to fold this so I won't knock everything off on the floor. Go around this way. Get all the edges lined up. Going down the other side. Oh, I'm going to run out of bobbin thread. No, maybe not. It's just my foot controller acting up again. I think it's about time for a new foot controller. All right, so here's another one. So if my machine stops, just ignore the little ding ding. It's just my foot controller acting up. One of these days I'll go get me a new one. All right, so we're about down here to another corner, and then we're going to be ready for this little overlap again. So don't let me forget it this time. You guys are supposed to be watching me, you know. All right, so it's from between here and here. So, all right. Going down this other side. Get this out of here. All right, so we're about to our overlap. So here's our overlap, and then it's from here to here. So we're going to back up over. We're going to go down to this pin here. Okay, and then I'm going to get past the pin, and then I'm going to back up. So I'm hitting the reverse button. We're going to back right up over that. Same stitching. All right, and then we're going to go forward again. And like I said, you could have switched to a triple stitch there, but it's just, you know, I can do the reverse usually, okay? So I usually just do the reverse, whichever works for you. All right, a second here. Make sure my edges are even. So I'm about to the middle here. We're just about there. This is going to be so exciting to get this done. I've been anxious to get this one done. I've wanted to do it for a long time. And I have another one to do too. It's the May one. That's the flowers. But we could do that for summer. So that one, I hope to get it done by the end of May too. But that didn't quite happen. We got this one done by May. But the other one we'll do over the summer. I'd also like to do the quilt. I'd like to do the quilt. Red, white, and bloom. That's the other thing I'd like to do is red, white, and bloom. Okay, so I think we're back to, look, we're back to where we started. So I'm going to go ahead and go up here, and then we'll tie off when we get up to the top here. And I think we made it all the way around. All right, let's get all the pins out. I got a couple pins left that I forgot to pull out. Here we go. That's what one of the overlaps was. All right, so make sure we got all the overlaps triple stitched. It looks like I remembered all of them. Excuse me. All right, looks like we're good on all the overlaps. Okay, so there is our envelope back. So when we go to put this in then, so give me a second, let me get these pins out of our way. Get these pins out of the way. So what we're going to do then for this is we're going to reach in the middle, big middle part, and I'm just going to pull this through and turn it partially right side out. So I'm just going to pull the big middle part out and leave the ends inside out. So it's going to pull through like that, okay? And so it'll look kind of like this on the ends, okay? So these will be, and then what I like to do is take my fingers where that seam, you know, where the seam is, where the back and the top meet. And I just like to give it a good finger press there because it helps when I go to do the next step. So I'm just going to give this a nice finger press all along here. And then we're going to turn it when we get ready to put the pillow in, then we'll turn the ends in. Okay, so we do this side. So I'm going to finger press the seam where the top and the back meet. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so cute. Okay, I love the quilting. I love the little flowers. Okay, so I'm just going to finger press that in. Okay, so there is our envelope back is started. Okay, and these are the ends. So what we got to do next is let's talk about the pillow form. So I made my pillow form out of muslin. Actually, this was just kind of a cream colored cotton. And so I made mine, and I don't know if you can see this, so I'll kind of bring this up. You won't be able to see the whole thing. It's very long, you know, it's 38. So you cut your fabric, it says here, to cut 2 pieces of fabric. And I think I've made every pillow, bench pillow form that I've done. So I actually find it easier to just make it, okay? So this is, I cut 2 pieces that were 16 by 38, all right? And then I sewed around the outside edge 1/4 of an inch, and I left an opening, and you can see where they left an opening. This is on page 10 of the instructions, okay? So you can see that they left an opening right here, okay? So you could stuff it. So when I do the stuffing on these, and I'll try to kind of show you what I do, you can see where I sewed this together, and I'm a very poor hand sewer, so don't look too close. So what I do when I stuff these great big pillows is I like to stuff, I kind of go to the ends over here, you know, each corner, the corners, and then I go out to this corner out here, and then I start stuffing inward, okay? And then I start, so I kind of get my ends, my corners, and then I stuff inward. And then what I do is I lay this up on my sewing table, like on my cutting table, and I just beat it to make sure that it's not lumpy, okay? So it looks pretty good. So this is just cotton, 100% cotton. Like, it's not muslin, it's like cream colored, just cotton. I think it's the Waverly cotton from Walmart. So, or muslin works good. And I like these pillow forms almost better than the ones you buy, because these, if you happen to get something warm on them, or if you need to press a little bit like on your back to make it smooth, these are not going to burn or make holes in them. So these are much sturdier fabrics. So I would recommend making your pillow forms. And you do have to use quite a little bit of stuffing. I use the Morning Glory, I think is what it's called, fiberfill. It's not polyfill. It's like Morning Glory is the name of it. I get it at Hobby Lobby. So that works really well for me. So here's my pillow form. So I already have my pillow form all made. So it's very easy to make it. It's actually economical, and you just have to buy some stuffing. And I always have stuffing around. So that information on making the pillow form is actually on page 10 of my 9 by 14 instructions. So remember, I was using the 9 by 14 hoop. So that's on those instructions. Okay, so there's our pillow form. So now the next step is putting it into the pillow, because I like to put my pillow form in my pillow before I put the decorative stuff elements on it, because then I know everything is going to be in the right place. I've tried doing it beforehand, but then I kind of like something will pull and look weird when I put it on. So I always put the pillow form in first. So here's our front. I'm going to turn it over to the back like this. And to put the pillow form in, so see, we have 2 openings. We have one on this end and we have one on this end. So it makes it so much easier with this 3-piece back. So I'm going to stick this, and this is going to be very hard for me to do on the camera. So let me see if I can do it. I'm going to get it out from underneath the foot. See if I can do it. So what I usually do is I do this up on my cutting table, and I get it started from this end. Kind of give it a little push in there so it's kind of started, okay? And then I like to turn it around this way. Whoops, second here, we're stuck on something. I'm going to turn it around so that the pillow forms the other way, and then I'm going to reach in the other end, and I'm just going to pull that pillow form in. So you can see this is way easier than trying to get it pushed in that long hole with the two-piece backs, because they started with these two-piece backs and they were so hard. So I'm just going to pull this in and bring it down so that it's even with both ends. And get it all smoothed out. It looks pretty good. See here? Looks like it's pretty good. Okay, like that. So I've got, you know, here's the pillow form and here's the back. So we got that so far. Now we're going to turn it over so I can bring the ends over. So pull it down this way so you can see me. I like to do my grandma's little trick for the corners. So I don't trim these corners off. If you trim your corners off, I can guarantee you, you're probably going to go through them. And I've got to find my favorite tool, my Floriani turning tool. Okay, so I've got that here. I'm going to take my first finger and I'm going to put that into the corner. I'm going to pull the seam allowance down to the seam, and I'm going to push it into the seam and make the corner. Even though it's bulky, it's still fine. I've got it in my under my thumb, and I'm going to turn it right side out. Okay, and we'll do that on the other side as well. So I'm going to put my first finger in there. I'm going to turn the seam allowance down and push it in to make a beautiful corner right there. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it right side out. Okay, then what I'm going to do is take my little turning tool here. Let me turn this down a little bit. With this being big, it's hard to show it all on the camera. So I'm just going to take my turning tool and make sure that my corner is nice and beautiful. Just to finish it off. Usually it doesn't need a whole lot of help because they turn out really good. And then, turn this up here so you can see. Then I'm going to pull this over. It's usually better from the back here. Sorry. I'm going to pull this over my pillow form. So I'm just stuffing the end of the pillow in there. Okay. Get this end in there. I can kind of straighten it out. Straighten out the overlap down here. And there's one end. And see this then with this pillow form, since I've got a pillow form that has a cotton fabric on it, then I can actually take my iron. When I get all done, I'll probably take my iron and see, I'll just press the back of this and make it, because it's all wrinkly now since I've been playing with it. Okay, so let's do the other end. So we'll do this end a second here. I'm going to do the grandma's little trick. I'm going to put my first finger up into the corner here. Pull it down to the seam allowance and push it into the seam allowance. So you're creating the corner. Hold it with your thumbnail and push it right out. And then you don't want to trim those. If you trim those corners off, boy, I tell you, I have trouble. They always go through the end. So I'm going to pull it back, hold it, and push it out. Okay, and we'll take our little Floriani tool here. Push the corners out. And then I'm going to pull this over and stuff the little pillow form right in. So these 3-piece backs were a godsend when they started doing these. So much easier to get the pillow in. Now I'm a little bit off on my pillows. So what I need to do is I need to pull it up a little bit. Give me a second here. I'm going to pull this up just a little bit. I got it a little bit too far one way, so we'll just give it a little push here. Sometimes that happens when I'm not when I do this, I normally stand at my cutting table, and it's so much easier because then I can lay everything flat. That looks pretty good. Okay. And then again, like I said, this is a cotton fabric that's inside this the pillow form. So I can then press this with my iron when I'm all done and make it nice and smooth, because right now it's a little bit wrinkly. Okay. So here is our bench pillow. It's all done. Look at there. And now we're going to get ready to put the flowers on. So what do you think? So the flowers are going to go up here. I've got a few made already. So we're going to do kind of a variety of colors, I think. And whoops, I got some threads I need to get rid of here. There we go. Oh my gosh, that's so pretty. So there's the little boots and we're going to put a bow over here on the umbrella, so I'll show you the bow maker. And we're all ready to put the embellishments on our pillow. I wish I could show it to you. It's really hard for me to show the pillows to everybody because they're just so big. These long ones are so big. So there's the one end, and I'm just going to kind of push it over so you can kind of see it. And here's Welcome Spring, and then we're going to put a pretty little bow on top of here, and there's the other end. So we've got it in the pillow form, or the pillow form in the case. Got a rickrack on, and if you give me a moment, I'm going to turn the camera off for a moment while I prepare for the flowers. So I have to get a few more things out of my boxes over here to get the flowers, and then we're going to put our flowers, and then we're going to put a bow on the umbrella. Okay, so when I was looking at the instructions, the actual instructions talk about making ruched flowers and yo-yo flowers and felt flowers. So I decided that I just got done doing the June Kimberbell Cutie, which had the ruching around the watermelons, and I thought I'd had done enough ruching for 1 month. So I decided that I was going to do something totally different. So since this pattern has been made, Kimberbell has come out with a product called pull flowers, and I know a lot of you have probably seen these, and this is the summer pull flower set, and there's all kinds of colors in here. And so I decided that I was going to make some pull flowers out of this summer set. Okay, and there's all different kinds of flowers, different kinds of colors, and I had a couple already made that I hadn't used on something yet. So I thought, well, I don't want to waste those cute little flowers. So I'm going to use these two. I had a little peachy colored flower done. And I had this one that's kind of coral colored one done. And I thought, well, I really would like an orange flower. So I had this one done. Okay. So we're going to put a button in the middle of this to make it really cute. But I thought the other two buttons that we'll do is the umbrella is kind of pink, so I wanted to do this pink, and then I thought we'd make a yellow flower. So I'm going to take my summer pull flowers, and these are on the ShieldSewingCenter.com website too, and they're called summer pull flowers, and they have a fall set that are darker colors, so those are really cute too. So let's see, I'm going to look at this. I want a yellow, I think, and there's about a yard of each one of these colors. So I don't think that we need the whole yard, but I'm just going to take these off, and we might cut them in half. So let's see. Here's the pink one. I want this pink one. There's tape on them, so I got to find the end of the tape here. There we go. So I want this pink one. So I think we might cut these in half. I usually just kind of figure out about how much I want, and then I just guess. You know, there's no real right or wrong to these flowers. You can make them any length you want, but I'm going to cut these, I believe, in half. Okay, so here's my pink ones. So let's cut these in half. Now, if you cut these in half, remember that you're going to have, you're not going to have a knot. So like, if you use the whole thing, there's a knot on the back end of it, and if you cut them in half, there's no knot. So you'll have to make a knot. So we'll make a knot as we are working with these. So I'm just going to cut this one in half, and I'll have another half for later. So there's one, and then I'm going to use my yellow. Oop, this one I still have tape on. Just a second here. the tape off of here. And some of these are made out of grosgrain ribbon, and some of them are made out of like chiffon ribbon. So there's different kinds, you know, different kinds of flowers. And then depending on the type of ribbon they're made out of, or ribbon they're made out of, they, you know, some of them will be bigger than others. So like this one was made out of grosgrain, so you can see this one made out pretty big. So this one probably will too, but it's not as big of a flower. So I don't like to cut in the middle of a petal, so I usually cut, if I'm kind of close in the center, I like to cut in between petals. So I have a full petal. Let's see here. Yeah, so I'm going to cut, I'm just going to make this one just a little shorter, and I'll cut in between the petals here so they're not, there we go. All right. So I'll just choose 1/2. Okay, so we'll have 4, I think there's 5 flowers. Let me make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so there's 5 flowers on this pillow, and I'm going to make them all different colors in my pull flowers. And then we might add some buttons in the middle of a couple of these. Okay, so to make pull flowers, so that's the next step, is we're going to make some pull flowers here. Give me a second. I got to find my glasses and a needle because we're going to do a little hand sewing. And if you haven't done these pull flowers, I like to use these needles that have kind of a large eye on them, but they do need to be pointy because these strings that they put in these are fairly thick. Okay, so this one, I happen to choose the end that has a knot on the end, so that's good. So this one, we don't have to put a knot on the other end. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the string that's in here. They already come with the strings in them. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and thread this needle with this larger eye needle. Okay, and I'm going to start pulling the petals towards the end. Now the trick with these is to keep your petals going the same direction. Don't let them flip over. And if they do, you need to get them all smoothed out so that they're all kind of going the same direction. So I just kind of pull slowly and make sure all my petals stay going the same direction. So I'm just going to kind of keep pulling like this. Okay, and then I want to find where I started, you know, where the end was. So here's where the end was. We want to make sure everything's going the same direction here. Okay, so here's the end, and then I'm going to take my needle, hold these in, there we go. Make sure everything's going the same direction. And I'm going to put my needle right in where that knot was on the other end. This one had the knot on it, so I didn't have to produce the knot. So the other one, I might have picked one that didn't have a knot, so we'll see. All right, so now it's going to be all in one loop. Okay, so what my goal is here is I want to get all my petals going the same direction. I'm going to pull them down as I'm pulling this tighter, and I'm going to hang on to them so that I can grab and pull and make this really tight, okay? So I'm going to get them all going the same direction. Isn't that pretty? It's going to be kind of like a little carnation looking flower, okay? So they're all going the same way, and I'm just going to hang on to them in my hand here. And remember, I'm left-handed, so I am holding the needle in my left hand. So you would be going, if you're right-handed, you'd be going the other direction. All right, so I'm going to hang on to these and get all of these together. And I'm going to pull, and then I'm going to go through, and I'm going to tie some knots in this so that it stays really tight. And again, I like to use a pretty good sized needle because then it has something to hang on to, and then I can get that big heavy thread through there. But what I like to do then is once I get a knot in there, I like to go through the flower to the other side, and I like to go back and forth through the middle of the flower just to give me some more stitches in there. So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth through the flower so that it holds it together nicely. Okay, so you can see that all my petals are up here. I had them held together. So these, once you kind of get the hang of these, I had a hard time with them at first. I am doing better with them now because I've kind of figured out a couple little tricks that work for me. And I am a terrible hand sewer, so don't look at my hand stitches. They're really bad. All right, so we got it kind of sewn together. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the top of it and see if I like the way it looks. So what do you think? It looks pretty good. Kind of like the way that looks. So we're going to go ahead and put a couple more stitches through here. Maybe. There we go. Put a couple more stitches, and I'm going to go over the bottom now. Maybe if I can get it through there. These bigger needles are harder to get through. These grosgrain ones are kind of stiff. So I'm going to put a couple of threads over the bottom. Let's see if I can get it through there. Try not to stab yourself. I'm going to go this way. So that kind of holds it all together. Like that. And then I know it's not going to go anywhere. I think that'll be good. Ooh, I like that. What do you think? You like that little flower? And we'll kind of floof it out when we get ready to glue it on. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to take another stitch and we're going to tie this off. I just poked myself again. I poke myself a lot when I do this. All right, so I'm going to poke through here. And then when I tie off, I like to go through the loop. You know, you go over and make a loop, and then I'm going to go through that loop. I'm going to twirl my needle around it 3 times, and it makes a really hard knot in there, so it's not going to come out. Okay, so there's our yellow flower. I love that. It looks good. So what do you think of that? Okay, so it looks sort of like a carnation, doesn't it? All right, so there's the yellow flower, and I made this one. So this one had those really big petals on it. So I did this one the same way, but you can see this one just has these really big petals on it. So it doesn't have as many petals. It's a smaller flower. Okay, like that. And I might put something in the center of this one also, like a little button or something. And then the orange one was the same type of grosgrain as this. But I think I'm going to go ahead and put a button because this one turned out a little flatter in the center because it was a bigger petal. And then I think I'm going to put a flower button in the center just to make it look cute in the center. Looks like I've got a little piece of weird stuff in here, so we're going to trim that off. There we go. So I think that'll be pretty with that. And then this one is just a little sparser small flower. There's one stem that's really small, and I thought this little small flower would be cute on there. And I already had this one made, so I might have to floof it a little bit because I think it got a little squished. So I think it'll be okay. All right. So we got those 4. We need one more here, and let's do this one. Let's see if I picked the end with a knot. I'm not sure that I did. Let's see here. This one has a knot, but it's a little bit precarious, so we may go ahead and knot this one off. Yeah, this one's a little precarious. See, it just has a little teeny knot in it, so we may make a knot in this one. Okay, so when I do the ones that I've cut in half and I have to knot them, so let me get this off of here. I'm going to cut that knot off that's on there. When I have to knot these, what I do is I pull it up a little bit like this, and I'm going to get that little curl off the end. I like to put the needle in, and then I like to just make several knots through there and tie them off really strongly, except I just unthreaded my needle. This is the hardest part, is keeping the needle threaded. Okay, so let's go through there 2 or 3 times so that it's very strong. So when we go to pull it, it won't come out. Because I have had that happen to me. In fact, I had that happen in one of my last videos. I was doing a flower and I had to stop because I pulled the thread out of the flower. There we go. Okay, so I got a nice strong knot there. We'll trim that off a little bit. All right, so now let's go to the other end that doesn't have the knot. Let's see how we're doing here. I'm going to grab it here. Looks like I got a little bit of raveling going on here. So let's see if I can get rid of this this little ravelly piece here. This is sort of an organza-like fabric here. Got this long string here. Let's see if I can get a hold of it. There we go. Get that out of there. Yeah, I think I got it. Okay, get that out of there. All right, so let's find the other end. Oops, still got a string. These like to ravel, these soft ones. So I spend a lot of time cleaning the ravels. Okay, so here's the other end that has the open string. So we're going to go ahead and pull that. And these are a little harder to do because they wiggle around a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and thread this one. And I'm going to try to do the same thing. I'm going to try to keep all my petals going the same way. So these are a little tough because they wiggle around a lot. They're kind of scoochy. That's my technical term. Okay, so we're going to try to get these going here. Pull this needle, this end up, so I don't want to unthread my needle again. Oops, come on. I'm still going to have it unthreaded, aren't I? There we go. All right. So I'm going to pull this up. Let's see, I got to find where the other end is. Where'd the other end go, Jan? Here it is. Okay. All right. So these are kind of tough to keep the petals all going the same way. So I kind of have to hang on to them like that. That looks better. And then I'm going to try to find the end again. So here's the other end where the knot is. Okay. So we want to make sure that we get the thread in there so that it can make it into a circle. And then we're going to try to get all of our petals going the wrong same way again. Okay, so I kind of hang on to them and pull them down like that. These are the tough ones. I always have a hard time with these because the petals like to scoot around on me. If I stick my finger in the center, sometimes I can get them. Something is going on the other end. So it looks like maybe I might have had a knot come out. Let's see. Or it raveled. Let's see, we got a couple stray petals over here. Oh yeah, well, you know, something just raveled out, and that happens sometimes. Let me grab the other one. So you get to see me. I'll fix that one later. Let's see if we can find the other side here. Maybe we can get this one. Sometimes if you have a bunch of raveling up here at the top, the little string wants to just come out. So let's try this one. So this one we're definitely going to have to tie off. So we'll tie this off at the end. Get this little bit off. So as you can see that sometimes there's problems when you make these. They work pretty good most of the time, but I do have a little trouble with raveling sometimes. But I really like these pink flowers, so I want to use them. All right, so let's try this one again. We're going to tie this one off because this one had two open ends, so we're going to tie it off. So we have a knot. Maybe. There we go. Okay. So there's a knot. Let's see if we can get the other end now. The other one just wanted to ravel. This one's not quite as bad, but we'll have to be careful. You can see the little strings at the top. So these like to ravel because they're a little bit softer fabric. These are always the hardest parts. For me, the hardest part of the whole pillow is actually doing the decorative stuff. I find this the hardest for me. I do pretty well with all the other stuff, but these decorative stuff, sometimes it makes me, I usually get through it somehow, but all right, let's see here. All right, let's see. Get this pulled. I'm trying to get all the petals going the same way. Sure I don't unthread my needle. Whoops, almost dropped it. Okay, let's pull this up. Get them all going the right way. Okay. There we go. I think they're kind of all going the same way. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to try to get into the end of this one. Again, where the knot is. Okay, we're going to put the needle in where the knot was over here. And then we're going to try to get these all going the right way. This is going to be a pretty flower though. I love the pink. These are the hardest ones to do, these little ones, because they, so see how the little flowers aren't going quite, the little petals aren't quite all the same way? Because then you've got all those raw, weird edges sticking up. So you just have to kind of stuff them down in there. There we go, we're getting it. Okay, so I'm going to hold on to these. Pull them down like that. And then we're going to go through these and try to sew them together on the back. This one's being a little bit testy as well. It wanted to come apart a little bit, but I think it'll be okay. So we'll go through the back of it here and grab that one that's kind of loose. See if we can get it tighter. So I'm just kind of going through the underneath of it on this one. There we go. Isn't that pretty? So I've got a couple little strings, but I can trim those off later. All right, let's go through here again. So I got a little loose leaf over here, but we'll be gluing it down too, so that'll help. All right. Let's see how it looks now. Whoop. Because I had a couple of the flowers on here were supposed to be smaller, so I thought we could do these with the smaller, like this one's smaller too. Oh, I think that'll be pretty. Okay, so I think we're good. I'll get rid of some of the strings in a minute. All right, so let's tie this off here. Put a couple more stitches through the center. And then we'll tie it off. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my needle through the loop and I'm going to twirl it around 3 times, and then I'll put a nice knot in the back so it won't come apart. All right, and then we'll get some of these little strings off of here. Get some of these little strings. This one was really ravelly. I don't think I've had one that was this ravelly for a while. I often do the satin ones and the grosgrain ones, so I don't do these little organza ones as often. So these are a little harder to work with because they are kind of ravelly, but they're so cute. All right, let's trim this off here. Whoops. And then we got our flowers. There's 5 little flowers to put on our pillow. So we have to decide where we're to put them now. All right, so I'm going to get this out of our way. And I'm going to pull this one, and I'll fix this one later because I can still use it. It'll be fine. All right. So I'm not sure. Let's pull this up here. I'm going to pull my pillow up here. Here's our 5 little flowers. I have an idea where I want to put them. Lay them all over here. And I know I want to put a button in this one. I've got some flower buttons that would be really cute. And maybe this one needs a button too. Okay, so give me a second. I'm going to turn the camera up just a minute. I need to rearrange so I won't knock everything off on the floor when I get ready to move this pillow over. Just a minute. Okay, so we've got our 5 stems. So there's 1, 2, and then there's a little one down here. And I thought that little creamy colored one would be pretty down here because it's small. Okay, so we'll put that one there. And I think I want the orange one over here. So let's start with the orange one. I got my glue gun, and I'm just going to use hot glue to put these on. And I'm just going to put some hot glue on the back of this. And you want a pretty good, generous amount. And I'm going to put this one on top of the stem. So I'm going to kind of push it down. I want it to be above the words. Okay, and I think we're going to put a button in the middle of this one. So we'll get it stuck down there on the pillow first. I think I like that. So let's do that one. And then I know I wanted the little one in here. So let's do that little peachy colored one and put it in the center here. Okay, because that was just a small space. So that was a smaller flower. I'm going to give it a little hot glue. If I can get my glue gun to sit up there. And then we'll put this in on this stem, like that. Cute little flower. Okay, and then I'm not sure. Let's see. What do we want to do with the other ones? I think I wanted the peach one, this kind of corally colored one. I thought it would look good over here. Maybe it needs to, I don't know. Maybe I think it needs to go over here. And then I think this yellow one, let's see. Maybe the yellow one needs to go there. We'll have to look. And the corally colored one, this one's a pretty good sized one because I thought it would look good over on this side, over here. And then the yellow one, maybe up here. And then the pink one, what do you think? No, I don't want the pink one there. I think I want the pink one over here. And then maybe this one over here. Let's see. Where do they look good? I don't know, maybe that needs to go there. And then maybe the pink one can go over here. Because this was a shorter stem here. Let me put the pink one over here. So let's put the coral one in the middle here. So we're going to put the coral one here. And I'll pull this back so you can see it a little better. But maybe the coral one will look pretty here. Because this flower is small, so it can kind of set together with this one. So if I turn it, maybe like that. And we might be able to put a button or something in that one too. I'm not sure. Okay, let's put that one here. I think they will be fine anywhere they are. These are such cute little flowers. Okay, so this one I needed to play a little bit with the petals because they were being a little naughty. So I'm going to try to play with the petals a little bit as I glue it down. And I may have to put a little bit more glue on it just to get the petals to behave. Sometimes petals just don't behave though, do they? Flower petals. So I think that's cute. So I think that'll be okay. I think I need a little bit of glue under here to make these behave. These are just not, these are the two that are not behaving very well. See if we can get them to stick down there a little bit. There. Like that. I think that'll be fine. Sometimes if you stick your finger down in the center of it, it just makes them behave. And this one, it'll be okay. All right, so there's our little peach ones in the center. And then let's maybe the yellow one here, or do I want the pink one here? I think I want the pink one over here. So let's do the pink one over here on this side, because this was kind of a little short stem over here. So let me pull this up so you can see it. I'm going to poke it down in the center. Like that. And then to fluff it. And then I think the yellow one will go right here. Like that. What do you think? I think that'll look good there. So we'll do this one. Some glue on that. And put this one right here. Pull it down just a little bit. But I still think we need a little bit, like this, these two I think are fine without buttons, but I think maybe I might put a button. I'm going to put a button for sure in the yellow one. I may have to look at it for a day. Sometimes I have to kind of look at it before I decide. But I want a button on this one. I have these really cute flower buttons, and there's some small ones, so I don't know, maybe a yellow one in the center here. Let me see if I can find a kind of a yellowish colored one. So maybe that'd be cute in the center. I think that would be cute in the center, don't you think? Put the little yellow flower in the center of it. I'm going to put some hot glue in there. And put that button in the middle. I think I'll like that with the button in there. I just needed a little something. It was kind of plain. Have to get all the little hot glue off, but I think that looks better with a little bit of a little yellow flower in the center. What do you think? And this one might need a little flower button too. These are pretty poofy. You know, these littler ones are poofy. So they may be okay, but I think this one might need, let me see what I got out for other colors. What color would be nice? Might have a pink one. I may have to dump these out because I'm not sure. I'm looking for a small one. See what other colors of small ones I have. There's a whole bunch of colors in here. I'm just gonna look for some little ones. There's an orange one. I don't think the orange would look good though. Maybe, ooh, here's a little green one. Would this one be pretty in there? A little green one might be kind of cute. Let's see, what other colors are there? There's yellow again. Haven't used many of these yet, so there's a lot of them in here. That's what's fun about doing this is I think I kind of like the green one. We might put that little green one in the middle there because it kind of matches our lettering over here, doesn't it? And we'll put the little yellow one in, maybe put that little green one in there. Okay. Because the center is just kind of boring. Needs something in the center. Okay, I'll put this cute little button in there. There. All right. So we got some buttons in our flowers. So I'm going to pull this back so you can see it. I'm going to set it up so you can see it better. Get the camera organized so you can see what all the flowers look like. Ooh, I think those look nice. So what do you think? You like my little flowers? Have kind of a little flower arrangement of different colors on the stems. You know, I kind of like that. So those are the pull flowers. Those are easy to do, and I didn't have to make a bunch of other flowers. And I've always loved the pull flowers. They are a little tough to work with. Once you get the hang of them, you're going to have to practice a little bit. I've practiced quite a bit with them, so I'm getting a lot better at them now. So I really do like that, I think. Okay, so there's my flowers. Got my flowers done, my little flower garden for the spring. And now we're going to put our bow over here. It looks like I need to clean up some glue yet, but we'll work on that later. Okay, but I think that looks good. So there's my little flowers. And then I want to put let me push these buttons back so I don't have them all on the floor. Clean them up later. I'm going to put a bow on top of the umbrella, because they tell you to put a bow on the umbrella. Let me show you the picture here. So here's the bow for the top of the umbrella. And let's see, I'm not sure. I've got two different ribbons here. I'm not sure. I think I want this one. This one I don't think is quite long enough. this one's a little bit longer. Yeah, so let's try this one because it kind of matches my green. Okay, so I am very bad at tying bows. So I have this wonderful little thing called a bow maker. And these are on my website. These are on sew-along-with-jan.square.site. And so what I do with these, you put two little dowels in, and I wanted a couple of holes in between. And when you tie the bows, you're actually working kind of from the back. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to slip it, I'm going to crisscross them, and I'm going to slip the longer piece underneath. In fact, I need to come back this way just a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to put the knot. This is going to end up being the front knot right here. I'm going to put this over. Now this ribbon is about 3/8 inch, but it's one-sided, so it doesn't have it's not as pretty on the other side. See, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to turn this so when I go to tie it, all the pretty colors or all the pretty stuff is going this way. Okay, so I'm going to tie this. But these bow makers are awesome because then you can actually tie a bow. I am so bad at tying bows. But I love my bow maker, and I've had one for many, many years. And I got it when I started making dolls. And so this was one of my doll making friends that made this bow maker for me. And I do have them on the website, on my website, and I will link it in the video as well. Okay, so when you do two-sided ribbon, it's easier to start with two-sided ribbon because then you know that it's the same on both sides. So if you make a mistake, it's okay. So what you do with one-sided ribbon though is you want to make sure that all the pretty stuff is showing. So see how I got that nice ribbon with my bow maker. like that. And here's my ends. And then we're going to glue this little bow on the top of our umbrella over here. So give me a second. I'm going to glue this right on top of the umbrella like that. And then I'll trim my ends off. Okay. So give me a second. I'll put this up so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to get my glue here. Second, I got to rearrange my ties a little bit. Sometimes you got to squeeze them and pull them a little bit. And they're always a little harder with this one. This ribbon, this grosgrain is kind of stiff. In fact, I'm not super hip on my bow, so we may just make another one. So I can always untie it, and we'll just make it again. I have harder time with grosgrain ribbon because it's kind of stiff, and you just have to, sometimes I have to make them a couple times until I get it so I like it. Okay, we'll try it again. So I'm going to go down here to my bow maker, wrap it around my two little dowels, so it's like having extra hands, and then I'm going to crisscross it. I'm going to slip this up under and up and over like this, and then I'm going to tie it in a knot like this. I'm just going to slip it under and tie it in a knot. If I can get a hold of the other end. There we go. Okay. And then the trick is I want all my pretty stuff going away from me because this is one-sided ribbon. Oh, that looks better. There we go. That looks better. Much better. What do you think? Did I do okay? That looks much better. Pull my ends a little bit, make it tight. Oh, that looks much better. All right, so now we can glue it to the top of our umbrella, and then we'll trim the ends off. Okay, so let me grab my glue gun. I'm going to put some glue down here on the knot. Okay, and then I'll move this up so you can see, and we're going to put this on top of our umbrella right in the center, like that. Hold it down. And you can see why I like to put the pillow in first, because then you know everything's going to be where you want it. Because if you try to put the pillow in later, I mean, after you can take the pillow out, of course, but I like to put the embellishments on with the pillow form in, because then I know everything's going to be where I want it. Okay, so now we're going to trim off our little ribbon ends at an angle. So let's go this way. I may have to put my hand in front of the camera. Sorry, guys. Get this one done. There we go. And there's our bow. I like the green. All right. And we got our flowers. We used our bow maker. I love the bow maker, so I'll link the bow maker so you can find the bow makers if you want one. I think they're $20. And my friend Orlin makes them for me now. So I have quite a few in stock, so if you need a bow maker. All right, so we did it, everybody. We have done it. So here is my little flower garden. Really like the flowers. What do you think? I like the pull flowers. I'm glad I did pull flowers. And I like the little buttons in there. Just gives them a little bit of cuteness, doesn't it? And these didn't really need buttons because they were like little poofy flowers. I'll have to play with this one. It's a little flat yet. And I like the pink one. So what do you think? There's our little flowers. And here's the bow over here on our umbrella. And I think that's it. I'm going to look at the instructions. I think that's it, though. And if you want to make the flowers that they recommended, they are in the instructions at the end, towards the end. But I just like the pull flowers, and I thought I had a bunch of them, and I thought, let's just make pull flowers. So I like the pull flowers very much. So what do you think? So we are done with Welcome Spring. This has been such a fun project. It was a little challenging. We had some challenging stuff going on with all the multi-hooping and also the quilting. And I just love the way it turned out. I'm so excited to have it done. So thank you, everybody. I'll take a good picture of this so you can see the whole thing. I'm sorry it's so hard on the camera because it's so big. But I will take a picture of it. And thank you so much for joining me for Welcome Spring. This is the Kimberbell bench pillow to welcome spring. And thank you so much for joining me, and have a great day.